So while there seems to be a drive towards tying more complex flies, I'm a big fan of simple ones. And today I'm going to show you a fly that couldn't be any simpler, the Brassie. In addition to being an easy to tie pattern, it is also very effective. If you're a beginner fly tyer, you're going to find that it's a great foundational fly, meaning that it gives you a lot of the skills you need to master fly tying. If you're an intermediate or advanced fly tyer, I think you'll find that there are enough variations of this fly, like adding in a bead head, adding in hot spots, that you can really create a lot of different versions of it. Like most interesting flies, the Brassie has a very cool backstory. It was originally invented by Ken Chandler and Tug Davenport near the South Platte area around Denver. And they were allegedly electrical hobbyists or electronic hobbyists. And so their version of the fly used fine copper wire as well as shrink wrap tape. And I think that story and those materials really help understand the workmanlike look that we have with the Brassie. It's not fancy, it's not complicated, but it is very effective. And that story came from an article on the Rocky River TU site, and I will link to that article in the video description. If you can't tell already, I really like the Brassie fly. This fly is special to me for two reasons, and so before we get into tying the fly itself, I just want to share those reasons with you. The first reason is that I caught my first fish on a Brassie. When I started fly fishing, a friend had taken me out. It was a cold day in March. We hadn't caught anything all day, and then towards the end of that trip, as the snow had started to come down, I caught my first fish. It was a rainbow trout, and the fly that I used was a Brassie. The second reason that this fly is so special to me is it was the first fly that I tied that I actually felt confident in. What do I mean by that? You see, when I first started fly tying, I produced a lot of flies that I thought were ugly. They were junk flies. And no matter what I did, whether it was go on YouTube or read books or ask for tips, nothing seemed to help me produce better looking flies. And then I tried to tie the Brassie fly pattern. And wouldn't you know, it was the first fly that actually looked decent. And so this fly was really important to me to being able to continue on as a fly tyer. So before we get to tying, let's cover the materials that you're going to need. First off, you're going to want some hooks. I'm a big fan of these BWO hooks. We're going to be using size 14. In addition to that, we'll be using some gold wire for the fly, as well as Peacock herl. I've gone ahead and laid these on a Post-it note. That way they're a little bit easier to get to. And then finally, we'll be using some black thread. So today I'm just going to be keeping it very simple by using that copper wire and black thread. But as you'll see later on, you will be able to vary the materials of this fly pretty easily, which in turn can really lend itself to having a fun tying experience. So the first step here is to put our thread on the hook. And again, you'll just go a few wraps to the left and a few wraps to the right. And then I always throw a half hitch knot in here. It's a nice way of sort of saving our work. We'll go ahead and snip this tag end off like that. And the next step here is to tie on our copper wire. So you can do this a few ways. You can tie it in down here at the end, or you can tie it up here so that the thread sort of wraps it along the body of the hook. I am a big fan of that second option because I think it makes the body look a little more uniform when the fly is finished. But then it also gives the fly a little more weight, which helps it get down in the water. So what I'm doing is just taking the thread and wrapping it around the hook and the wire. I'll go all the way down. I need to adjust that hook just a little bit. And once we're all the way down there, we'll go ahead and wind the thread back. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and take this wire and wrap it around the hook. Now, when I first started tying, I got really concerned with the wire wraps being uniform and right next to each other and perfect. Well, I'm here to tell you, I don't think the fish really care. So if you have a place like that that's kind of bugging you, you can just go back and rewrap it like I did, or you can just keep going. The key point here is you want to try to keep them close together all the way up the hook. And then as we get close to where that thread is, I'm going to go ahead and leave the end of the wire like that. We'll give it a couple wraps of the thread to lock it in. And then what I found is the easiest way to get this tag end of the wire off is by helicoptering it or rotating it off. So I'm just taking the end of my thumbnail, putting it up against the wire, and then with my other hand here, rotating it off. And it takes a few turns, but then it comes off really, really cleanly. So next we're going to take our Peacock herl, and I'm just sort of moving some of those feathers back just a little bit like that. And then I'm going to take that Peacock herl, fold it, and then bring it up to the hook and tie that in. I'll show you that again. So I'm taking the Peacock herl, I am folding it around the thread and then tying that herl to the hook. I usually like to do a wrap or two around the back, a wrap or two around the front. And then what I'm going to do next is I'm going to just wind this herl together, sort of forming a rope, if you will. That makes it a little bit easier when you are putting it on there. Then from there, we're going to go ahead and wind that herl around the hook. The goal really is to make almost like a ball, if you will. Like that. And one thing about herl is as you get towards the ends get really, really brittle. So I don't want to go too much farther here because they are liable to rip on me. So that is enough. And then I'm holding the herl in one hand, wrapping the thread around it. See what I mean by it breaking off? Good thing I decided to tie it in, otherwise we would have lost all that herl. Like before when I started this fly, I'm going to go ahead and put a half hitch knot in here. Again, that just saves our work, keeps things from unraveling on us. And then the final step to tie the Brassie is to take your whip finisher tool and add a couple wraps there to really tighten the material down and finish off the fly. Now, one thing as I am tying this, given how close I am to the eye of the hook, I want my wraps to go this way, right? So go away from the eye of the hook, because I tell you what, there's nothing more frustrating than being out on the water and picking up a fly from your fly box, going to use it and not being able to because you covered the eye of the hook with thread. All right, so we've given it a few wraps there. That looks really, really good. We'll go ahead and snip off the thread. I'm gonna put this off to the side. And here is our first copper Brassie fly. So what we'll do now is go ahead and tie another copper brassie. That way you can see the steps again. I'll go through it this time a little faster. We're starting our thread here. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll go ahead and put in a half hitch knot there, like that. And one thing that I've learned from tying is it's really important to keep tension on that thread. That's really key. And so I just wound the bobbin up a little bit. And then we'll take our wire. And what I've done, I guess I can show you, is I put several strands of copper wire in a Post-it note like this. That is a tip that I got from Tight Lines, the channel on YouTube. Fantastic channel, by the way. Great tips. Absolutely beautiful flies. But it's little things like that that allow you to crank out a lot of flies very quickly. So as you get to tying this fly, the Brassie, I would recommend you get out some hooks, you get out some copper wire that you have cut to size, you get out some strands of Peacock herl like this. And that way, you can go ahead and tie several of these flies at a time. And really, there's something incredibly satisfying about tying several flies in a session and then just seeing, a finished pile of flies. So what we've gone ahead and done here is we've wrapped the thread around the copper wire. I have brought the thread back up here, again, leaving a little bit of gap before the hook eye. And now I'm going to go ahead and wind the wire around the hook. So as you can see, I'm winding it a little quicker than I was the first fly that I showed you. What I find is the more that I tie in a session, the better that the flies get and my speed gets. So I will, gradually get better and better each fly. The flies will start to look better. It'll take a little bit less time. And that's really kind of a great place to be when you're producing several flies that look really good. It's a good feeling for sure. All right, so I've wrapped that copper wire up as far as I want to go. We're getting pretty close to the end of that hook eye. So I'm going to go ahead and tie this off. Again, I just bring the wire over here. I take my bobbin, do a couple wraps to tie that down. And I'm putting the end of my thumb right there, sort of laying it on the end of the hook, right up against the wire, twirling that off. There we go. Always nice when it comes out clean. And so there's a couple ways that you can tie in your herl. The way that I showed you before is sort of my preferred way when I'm only using one strand. So I lay it over the thread like that, fold it in half, try to get it about even on each side. And then I'm going to tie that in. And on this one, that herl is a little bit closer to the eye than I would have wanted, but that's okay. And then we'll go ahead and twist those two strands together, basically just forming a rope. You don't want to be too rough here though, again, as that herl is very, very gentle. And we'll go ahead and wrap it. And if the herl sort of comes unwound like that, not a big deal. Just keep an hand on those ends and tie them back together. All right, so we'll just keep wrapping. All right, we are almost done at the end of the herl. And again, I don't want it to break off on me, so I'm going to hold it over here, those two little ends, wrapping them a few times with the thread. Again, trying to keep tension on that thread. And we'll do a couple more wraps here. And then go ahead and snip these off as close as we can to the hook. There we go, that looks really good. And then from here, we're going to go ahead and whip finish. this fly. Again, working this way on the wraps. 1, 6, perfect. All right, and there we go. There is our second finished fly. And since we're here and we've got another hook out, why don't we go ahead and tie another one on. Starting to get in the groove here. So I like to throw in that 1/2 hitch knot before I cut the tag end off, right? Because I find that if I do it the other way, the thread is likely to unravel on me. So we'll take our wire. This piece is a little bit longer, so it'll be interesting to wrap it around the hook, given how long it is. That's okay. Again, just wrapping the thread around the hook and the wire like this. Adjust that hook just a little. There we go. And we'll wrap the thread up to about there. And then from here, we're going to take the wire and go ahead and just wind it around the hook. And one of the reasons that I like a little bit longer wires, it gives you a little more real estate to hang on down here. Makes it go a little bit faster as you're winding the wire around the hook. You know, when I first started tying, I tried to get a little bit skimpy on the wire, and I found that often I was cutting my wire too short. And so I've now gotten to a point where I realize that a little bit longer wire, well, at least leads to a little bit of waste at the end. It ultimately lets you tie flies a little bit faster, while also making the process easier. And for me, that is worth a little bit of waste at the end of the copper wire. All right. I'm going ahead and tie that in like that. We'll helicopter this off here. There we go. Well, I seem to have dropped my whip finisher, but that's okay. We will go ahead and put on our Peacock herl, like that. And with that tied in, we'll go ahead and wrap these strands of Peacock herl together, like that. And then wrap them around the hook. I think one of the things that makes this fly so effective on the water is that combination of wire plus the Peacock herl. Fish really, really seem to like it. All right, so then we're going to go ahead and tie in our Peacock herl. Again, a few wraps on the back and a few wraps in front of that herl. We'll go ahead and snip that off, and I will go ahead and add a couple 1/2 hitches here. All right. And there is the Brassie fly. So we'll begin by putting our wire So today I will tell you about many things. What they are, I'm still figuring it out.